Can somebody bring me one? I see one over there.
Do you have water? Do you need water?
I do have one. Yes. The other cups are finished. I brought my own. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Jai. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We're reading from Srimad Bhagawatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, Text 39. Purushasya, oh, wrong one, sorry. Nimittani cha tasyeha bhaktani anakha suripi swato jnanam buddha pungsam bhakti vairagyam eva va nimittani cha tasyeha bhaktanyana suripi swato jnanam buddha pungsam bhakti vairagyam eva nimittani cha tasyeha bhaktanyana suripi swato jnanam buddha pungsam bhakti vairagyam nimittani cha tasyeha bhaktanyana suripi swato jnanam buddha pungsam bhakti vairagyam Chant.
Nimittani chatasye Rotanyana kasuri Sotokyanam kutapumsam Bhaktir vairagyam eva
Nimittani chatasyeha Bhaktanyana suripi Swato jnanam buddha pungsam bhakti vairagyam eva
Nimittani, the source of knowledge. Cha, also. Tasya, such knowledge. Iha, in this world. Protani, mention. Anaka, spotless. Suripi, by
Bhagawatam.
Detachment.
Detachment.
Eva.
Eva.
Certainly.
Certainly.
Va.
Va.
Also.
Also.
Translation. Spotless devotees of the Lord have mentioned the source of such knowledge. How can one have knowledge of devotional service and detachment without the help of such devotees? We'll repeat after me. Spotless devotees of the Lord
Spotless devotees of the Lord
have mentioned the source of such knowledge.
have mentioned the source of such knowledge.
How could one have knowledge
How could one have knowledge
of devotional service and detachment
of devotional service and detachment
without the help of such devotees?
without the help of such devotees?
Purport. There are many inexperienced persons who advocate self-realization without the help of a spiritual master. They decry the necessity of a spiritual master and try themselves to take his place by propagating the theory that a spiritual master is not necessary. Srimad Bhagawatam, however, does not approve this viewpoint. Even the great transcendental scholar Vyasadeva had need of a spiritual master. And under the instruction of his spiritual master, Narada, he prepared this sublime literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. Even Lord Chaitanya, although he is Krishna himself, accepted a spiritual master. Even Lord Krishna expected a spiritual master, son Pandimuni, in order to lead life. And all the acharyas and saints of the world had spiritual masters. Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna accepted Lord Krishna as his spiritual master, although there is no necessity of such a formal declaration. So, in all cases, there's no question about necessity of accepting a spiritual master. The only stipulation is the spiritual master should be bona fide, i.e., the spiritual master must be in the proper chain of the civic succession called the Parampara system. Suris are great scholars, but they may not always be anagha or spotless. The anagha suri is one who is a pure devotee of the Lord. Those who are not pure devotees of the Lord or want to be on an equal level with him are not anagha suri. Pure devotees have prepared many books of knowledge on the basis of authorized scriptures. Sri Rupa Goswami and his assistants, under the instructions of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, have all written various literatures for the guidance of prospective devotees, and anyone who is very serious about raising himself to the standard of a pure devotee of the Lord must take advantage of those literatures. Mukam karati vachanam anam terim yatam hamante Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshumiritam Yena Tasama Shri Gurave Namaha. So when I was reading purport, Prabhupada was saying there are some people who say you don't need a spiritual master. And one such person wrote a book on how you don't need a spiritual master. And so Srila Prabhupada said, then why is he writing a book? He's being a spiritual master. He's telling people you don't need one. And so nobody should read his book because you don't need a spiritual master and he's trying to be one. And so this is happening. So today I want to talk about these pure devotees who can help us to get knowledge of Krishna. And I'm going to talk about these pure devotees in 3 different ways. First of all, about how they are Mahatmas, how you can recognize a pure devotee as Mahatma or Mahajan, which is the same meaning as Mahatma or broad-minded soul. And then the second way I'm going to discuss it is how they are Uttama Adhikaris, or first-class devotees. And thirdly, I'm going to get to Bhagavad Gita and see the criteria of the disciple and the spiritual master. What are the qualifications? And then I'll end with how Srila Prabhupada is that. Of course, in the middle it'll be there too. Maybe in the beginning. There's a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita Dharma, Stapana Hetu Sadhur Vyavahara real religion is established by the behavior of a pure devotee. So how do we know what is religion? There's so many religions in this world. You have to look at the behavior of a pure devotee. Doesn't matter what religion you are, you may be Christian, you may be Muslim. If you've got a pure devotee there, look at the behavior and see that. Prabhupada's behavior established true religion in this world. Wherever he traveled, he brought Krishna, and he defended Krishna from the atheists. So there are 12 Mahatmas in this universe, or Mahajans. I'll give their names: Brahma, Narada, Shiva, four Kumaras, Kapila, Manu, Prahlad, Janaka, Bhishma, Bali, Shukadev, and Yamaraj, Lord of Death. So we also have Mahatmas in our Gaudiya Sampradaya. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, is the original. Of course, Krishna is the original, and then Lord Chaitanya came. And of course, he's Krishna himself, so he's the original Mahatma. But then his next representative is Sri Damodar, and then the six Goswamis, all the way down to Srila Prabhupada. And so in the material world, the Mahatma, or a great soul, or person who we should follow, is understood in different ways by different religionists. So this is it. This is in the purport of Madhya Lila 17th chapter, 185th verse. And Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati has commented on all the kinds of Mahatmas you can find in this material world, at least at his time. So for the conditioned soul busy in sense gratification, a Mahatma or Mahajan is recognized according to proportion of sense gratification he gives. For example, a businessman may consider a certain banker to be a Mahatma, as he gives him lots of money. And karmis who want to enjoy may consider philosophers like Jaimini. Of course, now we have our different philosophers. We don't follow Jaimini. That was in Bhaktisiddhanta's time. But yogis, those who follow yoga, they still follow Patanjali. Patanjali yoga, that is followed. And they think he is a Mahatma. And then for the Gyanis, we have the atheist Kapila, Vishishta, Durvasa, Dattatreya, for the impersonalists, And then for the demons, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, and so on. For the anthropologists, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says we have Darwin, he's a Mahatma, and for the anthropologists, and philosophers, historians, the scientists he mentions. They are accepted by some as Mahatmas, by many. Philosophers, historians, literary men, public speakers, social and political leaders, these are on the list. And who accepts these Mahatmas? There's a verse in Bhagavatam, Shravid, Varat, Oshta, Karai, Samstuta, Purusha, Ashu. Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses, praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna. So these people listen. Sometimes he adds to the list doctors, psychiatrists, social workers, have no knowledge of spiritual identity, but people consider them Mahatmas. We also have, we can add to the list movie stars, athletes, people who do worship them, and rock stars, musicians. They can be added to the list. But who are the real Mahatmas? Narottam Das Thakur says, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya Chitite Kari Aikya. One should accept as one's guide the words of the sadhus, Shastra and Guru. Sadhu is a great personality. He says, like Lord Chaitanya. The Shastras are Prabhupada's books, and the spiritual master is Guru. He confirms the Shastras. So we have a verse in second canto. Hirata Punanda Pulinda Pukasha Vira Shimba Yavana Kasa, and even other sinful people can be purified by taking shelter of devotees of the Lord. And so we go through the devotees, they get the power, and we get purified, and then we can get delivered and go back to Godhead. So Prabhupada says in that purport, if the leadership of world affairs is entrusted to devotees of the Lord, for which a worldwide organization under the name and style of International Society for Krishna Consciousness has already been started, Then, by the grace of the Almighty Lord, there can be a thorough change of heart in human beings all over the world. Because devotees of the Lord are able authorities to effect such a change by purifying the dust-worn minds of people in general. So, before I was a devotee, I was part of the hippie movement, and we wanted a revolution. But our type of revolution that the hippies wanted was that, one type of materialistic people should replace another type. And I saw through that, and I thought, no, this is not going to work. Then I met Prabhupada. And first thing in his book, which I got, first canto of Bhagavatam, he says, we want to create a revolution in the hearts of this world's misguided civilization. I said, yes, this is the revolution we want. And I was just reading the other day that there's two kinds of strength. There's a material strength, and that can only go a certain way. Material things, they have a beginning and an end. There's a limit to it. There's a limit to material strength. But spiritual strength is much more powerful. And that's the only thing that can defeat material power, spiritual strength. And so we are getting the spiritual strength by reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada said, we'll create a revolution in the hearts. So that is the kind of revolution that we are a part of. We are revolutionary spiritual people. So who's qualified to join this movement? Prabhupada says in purport, in Bhagavad Gita it says there's no bar to becoming a devotee of the Lord. By becoming a devotee, everyone is eligible to return home back to Godhead. I think Nectar Devotion says the same thing. One qualification though, only qualification is one takes shelter of a pure devotee of the Lord, who has thorough knowledge in the science of Krishna. Anyone from any part of the world who becomes well conversant in the science of Krishna becomes a pure devotee and a spiritual master for the general mass of people, and they reclaim them by purification of heart. Yes, so I was hearing the memories of Prabhupada. One devotee said, quoted Prabhupada as saying, if you read a chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam every day for 1 year, you'll become a great scholar in Bhagavatam. And guess what? I did that. I did the Sanskrit. I was singing every yes, Prabhu.
What happens if you've been read to?
What happened if you've been?
Read to. Thank you.
Read to. That should count.
You learn by
Yeah,
listening.
read. If you hear, that's good. We have different ways, and we're not so restricted that way. If you hear a chapter a day, then also that works. Yes.
Like what if Corky Shortgoth Babaji showed up?
Yeah, what if he showed up? I'm sure he already had the whole Bhagavatam in his head. Right. So anyway, that's what Prabhupada said, and it works. And if you hear it also, try it. You should try it.
Do you know about Patanjali? Do you know what the first two?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Of yoga
I'm not.
Yama and Niyama.
Oh yeah, I know the.
Yamaraj is Dharmaraj also.
Yeah, I know the limbs of Yogaraj. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you.
Do you know
So-
what Patanjali is though?
Patanjali.
It's
Yeah,
an
he's-
association, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
So we don't make offenses against Paul.
Yeah, we don't want to commit offenses. Thank you for saving me.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but I was just quoting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. I wasn't saying anything myself.
I'm just, the yoga systems are all connected.
Yeah.
Distinct.
Yeah. When I mentioned Patanjali, I was quoting from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, so I'm safe.
I have my Smarta Brahmin guru, I have my Vaishnava guru, you can
Yeah.
have
Good.
spiritual master.
So we'll continue after class.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. All right. So, if we simply know Gita and Bhagavatam, that will be very helpful for turning other people's hearts. So, this is Prabhupada's miracle, that he took people who had no knowledge of Krishna, and he made us devotees, turned us into devotees. And so this is Prabhupada's mercy. Every one of us is here today because of Prabhupada's mercy. on a morning walk, Prabhupada said, it seems Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not Prabhupada said, no, when the devotee said to Prabhupada, seems Lord Chaitanya preached in India, but left the rest of the world for you. And Prabhupada said, and for you. And for you. We also have to do it too. Prabhupada's not the only one here.
I learned how to read in 5th grade.
Wow.
Yeah, I faked it till then.
Good for you. So, the main thing is that we want to serve Prabhupada. And that's why we're here. And that's the purpose of our lives. So Krishna, we know, he brought Krishna Prema. He brought the treasure, but it was locked. He demanded everyone, you surrender to me. In Bhagavad Gita. But when Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya, he opened the treasure, he ate the contents, and distributed it freely. But after Lord Chaitanya, 500 years later, it was still locked for the rest of the world, even for modern day India. So Prabhupada took the treasure, opened it up, and gave it to everyone all over the world, regardless of birth or qualification. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it talks about how Lord Chaitanya brought the desire tree of devotional service to this earth and became its gardener. And so the branches of the Chaitanya tree formed a cluster or society with great branches covering the universe. And Prabhupada said, our International Society for Krishna Consciousness is one of the branches of the Chaitanya tree. So we're a branch of Lord Chaitanya's tree. From each branch grew many hundreds of sub-branches, and no one can count how many branches grew. The fruits ripened, became sweet, nectarian. The gardener, Lord Chaitanya, distributed them without asking any price. Not considering who asked for it, who did not, who was fit, who was unfit, Lord Chaitanya gave the fruit to everyone. And he said, I'm the only gardener. How many places can I go? How many fruits can I make and distribute? Therefore, I order every man within this universe to accept this Krishna consciousness movement and distribute it everywhere. So we have this order from Lord Chaitanya, and Prabhupada is giving us the same order, that we should distribute the fruits of Krishna consciousness. And he did say, Sankirtan will keep you happy, and the books will keep you convinced. And so we heard about the Mahatmas. Let's hear more about the Uttamas, and that is from also Chaitanya Charitamrita, where the people in Kulinagram asked Lord Chaitanya, please let me know who is actually a Vaishnava and what his symptoms are. So Lord Chaitanya said, one who's always chanting the holy name of the Lord is to be considered a first-class Vaishnava, and your duty is to serve his lotus feet. So, yes, the following year they asked Lord Chaitanya the same question. So the last answer was for the middle-class devotee, Madhyam, and the next answer is for the Uttama. Lord Chaitanya, so they asked him, who is a devotee? What are the symptoms of a Vaishnava? And Lord Chaitanya said, first-class Vaishnava is he whose very presence makes others chant the holy name of Krishna. And so, Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says, if an observer immediately remembers the holy name of Krishna, upon seeing a Vaishnava, that Vaishnava should be considered a Mahabhagavat, first-class devotee. Such a Vaishnava is always aware of his Krishna-conscious duty, enlightenment, and self-realization. He's in love with Krishna, and his love is without adulteration. He sees everything connected with Krishna, and he can chant the holy name perfectly. He sees who is sleeping, and he is awakening conditioned souls. He opens eyes that are closed by forgetfulness of Krishna. His living entity is liberated from the dullness of material energy and engaged fully in the service of the Lord. So Mahabhagavat can spread Krishna consciousness, and he doesn't distinguish where Krishna consciousness should be spread or where it should not. So this is the mood of Nityananda. I'm going to tell you a story about how Prabhupada showed this mood of Nityananda. This is a story of one of my god sisters, Krishna Nandini, who became very famous as the head of the Grihastha Vision team, and she married to a Muslim. And still, she's head, and he also is, he's very mellow, he's very devotional, and he preaches to his Muslim friends. But he's keeping his Muslim faith. So how did she become a devotee is very, very interesting in how Prabhupada has them with Nityananda. So she was in Cleveland. Her mother got a book. Her mother read the book and said, okay, we gotta be devotees. She shaved up all her kids. They all had to wear devotional clothes. They were going to the temple. Temple president said, you can't just do that. You can't just shave up. You can't just join like that. He was not happy with them. And he even called the police to get them out of the temple. And these were black devotees. So we don't know why he did that. But what happened
And
is...
white hate is real too.
Huh?
Now white on white hate is real too.
Yeah.
So if you never hesitate to put a Buddha on his back.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's hear the end of the story. So her mother got inspiration. Let's drive. We don't know where we're going. We're just going to drive. And we're going to pray to the Lord where He should lead us. So they drove. They were in Cleveland, which is, where Cleveland is. It's Midwest. So they kept driving and driving, turning here, asking the Lord which way to turn. They ended up in Dallas, Texas. Went to the temple. And they asked, can we stay the night? And they said, yes, Prabhupada is here. And and tomorrow is Radhastami. We're going to install the deities tomorrow, and Prabhupada is going to initiate. So, what happened? They stayed the night. The mother got a 6-hour darshan with Srila Prabhupada. And at the end of her darshan, Prabhupada said, so, how many you want me to initiate? So, she said 5. So the whole family got initiated. But before they got initiated, the devotees were saying, no, these are troublemakers, Prabhupada. You can't initiate them. You can't initiate. We heard from the temple president. And Prabhupada said, where I see a spark of Krishna consciousness, I fan it. And he initiated them. And later on, the temple president that kicked him out apologized. And Krishna Devi said, no, I'm very happy you kicked us out because otherwise we wouldn't have got initiated by Srila Prabhupada on Radhastami. So, that's the mercy of Nityananda, and that's the qualification of a pure devotee. So we have Bhagavad Gita here, who is a spiritual master. Try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Okay, so qualification, three things the disciple should do. We've been hearing a lot about spiritual master in the last few days. Inquire submissively, render service. Submission is actually a third one. Inquire, be submissive, and render service. So those are the 3 things. But in the purport, it says there are 2 more things that Prabhupada says a disciple should be careful of. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. No blind following. What does that mean? What does blind following mean? Yeah, well, I'll tell you what Prabhupada said in a lecture on that, but that's true also. Prabhupada said, there's a Swami, he has so many thousands following him. Let me become his disciple without any knowledge. Yeah. And then he gives another example. A Swami says, give me money, I'll make you God. So, then there's absurd inquiry. Here's the absurd inquiry. Can you show me God? And some cheating gurus trick them into believing they have seen God. So Prabhupada gives an example. Suppose you go to a professor and say, can you immediately make me an MA? If he says yes, why not? Then aren't you a fool, and isn't he also a fool? So, Dhruva Maharaj went to the forest, did so many austerities before he could see God. And they think they can see God immediately without any training. So qualification of the guru is Tattvadarshi. He has seen the truth. He sees through the Shastras. So in purport, Prabhupada says, following instruction of the spiritual master is the same as seeing Krishna. So, if we're following Prabhupada's instructions, we are seeing Krishna somehow or other. It may not be through our eyes. There are many ways to see Krishna. We've got a lot of senses. So Prabhupada was asked, are your disciples pure devotees? Prabhupada said, if they are following, they are pure devotees. Myself, I'm not perfect, nor I'm pure, but my only qualification is I'm simply trying to follow the instructions of my spiritual master. So that was Prabhupada. And then we hear more about knowledge. When you have learned the truth, you will know all living beings are part of me. They are in me and are mine. Thank you. So this knowledge is very, very pure. And there's nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge, the mature fruit of all mysticism. So this is what we want to get. So you need to find a spiritual master for that. I'll just do one more story which glorifies the knowledge. King of Iran got a book containing the secret to raise the dead with an elixir made of herbs and trees from the high mountains of India. So the king sent his chief minister to find them. He looked everywhere with the help of some sages, but couldn't find anything. Then he found one famous sage who had also searched. He discovered that the elixir described in the book was actually an allegory. The high mountains were the wise men of lofty intellect, very intelligence. The trees and herbs were their writings. The wisdom taken from their writing was the elixir of life that revived the dead intellect of ignorant men. So this is
Thanks,
Veda.
fun stuff.
So Prabhupada, in the beginning, when there were just a bunch of hippies in his class, 1966, he said, we require thousands of spiritual masters who have understood Krishna's science to preach all over the world. Therefore, we have formed a society. We invite all sincere souls to take part in the society and become spiritual master and preach the science all over the world. Great necessity for this knowledge. So, Srila Vyasadeva, he wrote this Bhagavatam that we're hearing. He's the original spiritual master. How did he begin his glorification of Krishna? He said, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Then he gave his benediction. If you hear Bhagavatam attentively and submissively, Krishna becomes captured in the heart. So this is Parampara. We worship our spiritual master, and our worship goes up, and the mercy comes down to us. So how did Vyasadeva conclude his first prayer, the first verse of Bhagavatam? He said, Dhimahi, I meditate, I worship. So, Prabhupada quoted this word when he was doing Vyasa Puja of Srimad Siddhanta Saraswati. And he said, actually, the worship I have to do. But I'm doing it with all of you together, the whole family. If you've been in India, in a Vrindavan temple or any big temple in India, you'll see sometimes small little kids get lost from their parents. And you try to help those little kids. And they're not satisfied until they find their mother. And the mother, when she comes in the temple with all her kids, she bows down. The baby, the kid, baby in her stomach, the baby on her chest, the baby in her hand, they all bow down together. So Prabhupada said, this means, although it's me that has to do the worship, when I worship, you all worship with me. I take you all with me. I take you all with me to Krishna. So this is our process, that we are worshiping Srila Prabhupada, we're worshiping spiritual masters, and he takes us. By their power, we can do some service and go back to Krishna. And so Bhagavatam is spoken by Shukadeva, it's very sweet, and Prabhupada has tasted it, it's even sweeter. So many sannyasis went to the Western countries before Prabhupada, but no one became a Vaishnava. So one such sannyasi gave Prabhupada advice. You're going to a foreign country, you don't know which hand to take the fork and the knife. So Prabhupada told him, I'm not going to learn all these things. I'm going to teach them something else to forget it. And just yesterday I saw on Facebook a very interesting picture posted by an Indian group, I think Sanatan Dharma, and it had a picture of Indian ladies wearing saris, exposing every part of their body. And then it showed a picture of Iskcon ladies wearing saris like Prabhupada taught. And they said we should follow the Iskcon devotees and how to wear saris. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting that Prabhupada did teach us different things. And when he was praised, he said, no, the only credit is I'm following the words of my spiritual master. I didn't change anything, I'm presenting Gita as it is. If there's any credit, this is my credit. I didn't mix everything. So we should take advantage. We got the mercy of Prabhupada and giving in the form of his books, try to spread what we know, the knowledge, whatever knowledge we got, whatever we know from Prabhupada, we should share. So I'll stop here. If anyone has questions, Prabhu, you have any more?
Tons of them.
Okay, let somebody go first, and then you can ask me one. Does anybody else have a question? We'll have time for maybe one or two.
Okay.
But it's good, you have questions. It's really good. Because that's a sign of a real intelligence and not blind following. Anybody else have questions? Okay, Prabhu, you're on. What's your first question?
Who were the Mahatmas again?
Who are the Mahatmas?
Just kidding.
Okay, there's a list of 12, according to Bhagavatam. Brahma, Narada, Vyas, 4 Kumaras, Yamaraj, Shiva.
Do you know how
Bhishma.
Patanjali came? Do you know who taught Patanjali yoga?
I don't, a little bit, because I do yoga every day, Iyengar yoga, a little
So you
bit.
know the story of how Patanjali sunk into the causal ocean?
Pardon me?
You know the story of how Patanjali sunk into the causal ocean?
No, I don't know that story.
Vishnu
But
and
I think I should talk to you
Nanda.
afterwards, but I might not have time about that. So do you have another question?
Sure.
We could talk about that after, because I also follow, I do yoga, but yeah. You have another question?
Sure. I'll ask you after class.
Okay, we'll talk. We'll talk. We can have your son together. All right, thank you very much. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.